taken a look at blood, we would have taken a general look at blood, the cells that are made up of blood, the three cells, red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes, white blood cells, also known as leukocytes, and platelets, also known as thrombocytes. We took a look at the features of erythrocytes. We looked at the two types of leukocytes or white blood cells, which are lymphocytes and phagocytes. And we looked at how thrombocytes or platelets operate. And we were also able to see how those blood cells and therefore the blood helps to achieve immunity in the human body. So we were able to take a look at the first part of the circulatory system, which is the blood. Let's now take a look at the human heart. Now, a lot of times we might think a heart looks like this, especially on Valentine's Day, but really and truly it looks something like this. Now, the heart is the muscular structure within the chest that pumps blood around the body. It is also responsible in pumping blood to the lungs, which would cause the lungs to become oxygenated, or rather, meaning oxygen is added to the lungs. So we see here the position of the heart. It's between the lungs in the middle of the chest, right there between those two lungs. It has to be close to the lungs because the lungs and the heart need each other tremendously. All right. So it's very important to look at the parts of the heart to understand them. Now, first of all, the heart has two sides, the left side and the right side. Now, over here is what we call the left side. This part where you see the walls look a bit thicker, this is the left side of the heart. Over here where the wall looks a bit thinner, this is the right side of the heart. Now, each side, the left and the right, each side is made up of two chambers. So there is an upper chamber called an atrium and a lower chamber called a ventricle. The upper chamber is called an atrium. The lower chamber is called a ventricle. So on your left side, there are two chambers. Let's go back to this diagram. There is the upper chamber there and the lower chamber here on the left side. And then on the right side, there is the upper chamber. It's a bit bigger than the one over here, but the upper chamber is here and the lower chamber is here. The upper chambers are called atrium and the lower chambers are called ventricles. Now, if you realize they have different names based on which side they are. So if each side has two chambers, it means in general or in total, the heart has four chambers. The heart has on the left side, the left atrium and the left ventricle. And on the right side, it has the right atrium and the right ventricle. So in total, the heart has four chambers: left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle. All right, now it's very important that we understand the parts of the heart as well as how blood would flow, Now, this is a good explanation of how blood flows through the heart. Now, we start on the left side. Blood enters your heart through what we call your pulmonary veins. Your pulmonary veins are coming from your lungs. And as you can guess, your lungs are carrying blood that is filled with oxygen. So the blood that is coming through your pulmonary veins here, and you see you have two pulmonary veins. You might wonder, why is it that you have two pulmonary veins coming to the heart? Well, remember we said these pulmonary veins are coming from the lungs. They're coming from the lungs. So therefore, because they are coming from the lungs, let's put two and two together. There are two lungs, so one is coming from each lung. One is coming from one lung, one is coming from the other lung. And both of them end up in the left atrium. All right. So all the blood from your lungs that is filled with oxygen, it comes into your atrium. Then it leaves your atrium. It is pumped from your atrium into your left ventricle. Now, if you notice here, these that you see here with all these dots, these are muscular walls. And the walls are a bit thicker on the left side than on the right side. And that is because when the heart pumps blood, these muscles have to have enough energy to squeeze the blood from the left ventricle up through here, this tube called the aorta. We met the aorta a bit earlier. The aorta is going to push blood up into the head, the arms, and of course the rest of the body. Now, when the blood goes around the head and in the arms and around the rest of the body and it comes back up, when it comes from the arms and the head, it comes through something called the superior vena cava. So this is the blood coming back from the head and the arms. And the inferior vena cava is bringing blood back from the rest of the body. Then all the blood now enters into the right side of the heart, specifically the right atrium. Now, does this blood have oxygen? No, it doesn't, because remember, when the blood went out through the aorta, it would have gone to different parts of the body that took the oxygen from the blood and put carbon dioxide into the blood. So this blood now would contain carbon dioxide. The heart would pump the blood from the atrium into the right ventricle, and then it will be pumped where the ventricle now would push the blood up into this thing called the pulmonary artery. This Y-shaped, T-shaped thing is called the pulmonary artery, and the pulmonary artery carries the blood back to the lungs. Why is it carrying it back to the lungs? So that the lungs could remove the carbon dioxide and it could put more oxygen. All right. So this is very important to remember. It's very important. You can pause it here, study it, study the flow of the blood through the heart. Try your best to understand what's going on. Try your best to understand what really is going on. This is another good diagram, especially with the use of the arrows. Whenever you're describing how the heart pumps blood, it is very important to start on the left side with the pulmonary veins coming from the lungs. So start, if you're asked to describe it, start with the pulmonary veins coming from the lungs. Say how the blood is coming from the lungs through the pulmonary veins into the left atrium and continue the rest stuff. Also notice how the heart also contains things called valves. We have the mitral valve on this side. We have aortic valves here. We have tricuspid valves here. We have pulmonary valves here. Now, valves are important in that they help to push blood along and they help to prevent a backflow of blood. So, for example, the left atrium, how it has the mitral valve, when blood is flowing through here, the shape of the valve tends to push the blood into the ventricle. But when all the blood leaves the atrium and comes into the ventricle, the mitral valve is supposed to prevent the blood from flowing back into the atrium. All right. There's some persons who sometimes have to have surgery to replace or strengthen these valves. All right. Different things happen. You know how it is at times. All right. Now, we understand what is happening both on the left side of the heart. So what you can do, the note that I just said here is basically what I explained. You can pause the note and you could just take some notes from it if you want. You could pause it, take your time, try and understand it. This is all that's happening on the left side of the heart, where the pulmonary veins send blood from the lungs into the left atrium and then it goes into the left ventricle and then into the aorta. And then now, you could take a picture of this. These are some notes describing what's happening on the right side of the heart when the blood comes back from the head and the rest of the body into the right atrium and goes into the right ventricle before it goes into the pulmonary arteries and to the lungs. Now, this is, anytime you're looking at the heart, obviously when you feel your chest, you feel the heart beating. And this is where we come to something called the cardiac cycle. The cardiac cycle is a series of events that occurs in the heart within one heartbeat. Now, each heartbeat lasts for about 0.8 seconds. So therefore, a cardiac cycle repeats about 60 something to 70 times in 1 minute. That means that your heart basically beats on average 70 times per minute. All right, that's what that means. Now, the cardiac cycle is comprised of 2 stages, systolic pressure, or what we know as systole, and diastolic pressure, or what we know as diastole. This is a good example to show you exactly what we mean by systole and diastole. Now, I like to explain it like this. Diastole is a word that simply means relaxation. Systole is a word that refers to a squeezing or a contraction. So if we say the heart is in diastole, the heart is at rest. If we say the heart is in systole, the heart is pumping, it's squeezing. All right, so let's see now how the cardiac cycle occurs. So during three main stages we see here, right? During cardiac systole, this is where all the chambers of the heart are relaxed and blood flows into the heart. So whenever you have blood flowing into the left atrium and the right atrium and flowing from the atrium into the ventricles, that is called cardiac systole. The blood is just flowing smoothly into the ventricles, all right? But then now, after that, you have something called atrial systole. Now, listen, remember systole means squeezing, diastole means rest. So as soon as you see atrial systole, you know that the atria are squeezing. Blood is being pushed from the atria into the ventricles. So blood is being squeezed or pushed, right? But the ventricles are in diastole. So that means what? That means they are at rest. And then now you reach the third point in the cardiac cycle where atrial diastole, that means the atria are at rest, but there's ventricular systole, which means the ventricles are squeezing the blood out now. All right, so it's very important to remember this. So cardiac diastole, all the chambers are relaxed, the blood is flowing into the heart. Atrial systole and ventricular diastole. Atrial systole, the blood is squeezing from the atria into the ventricles. And atrial diastole and ventricular systole, the atria, the left and the right atria are at rest, and the ventricles contract and they push blood out of the heart. So imagine that cycle. That is the cycle that is going on there. All right. Now, this is a nice diagram to show you something that we should take note of. Blood pressure. Now, when you go to the doctor and he or she tests your blood pressure, he might give you a figure of like, oh, they might say your blood pressure is 120 over 80 or something like that, or 120 over 70 or something like that. The bigger number is called your systole number, right? Your systole number. And the smaller number is called your diastole number. The systole number shows the pressure formed by your heart when it's squeezing, the maximum pressure formed or created by your heart when it's contracting or squeezing. Diastole shows the maximum pressure shown or given by your heart when it's at rest. So, if you have a normal blood pressure, you should have a blood pressure of about between 80 and 120 for systole, and between 60 and 80 for diastole. Usually doctors will tell you the best blood pressure, the most balanced blood pressure is probably having a pressure of like a 120 over 70. So 120 for systole and 70 for diastole, something like that. But once it falls anywhere in these ranges, it is healthy. If your blood pressure gets too low, maybe your heart is not pumping your blood as it should, or maybe your blood vessels are restricting blood flow or something like that. If your systole pressure is less than 80 and your diastole pressure is less than 60, you have what is called low blood pressure, hypotension. But then now there's the issue of hypertension. So if your systole or your diastole gets too high, you can see what happens here, and you can take a read with these things to see what's up here. Very good information here. Pause it to see how different types of blood pressure are categorized, and even when it would be classified as being a health crisis, something that seriously needs to be looked at. All right, very, very important. Here's some other important information. You could pause as well, some stuff about heart disease. Very important, eat healthy, exercise, very important things to consider. And finally, we want to take a look at blood vessels, probably the easiest of the parts of this topic to consider. We already look at blood, we already look at the heart, so now let's take a look at blood vessels. Now, there are three main blood vessels in the body. We know what blood vessels do, but there are three main blood vessels in our body: arteries, veins, and capillaries. Now, if you are saying what an artery is or what a vein is, always remember this. A lot of people make the mistake and say arteries are blood vessels that carry oxygenated blood. Yes, but not all arteries do that. Some people would say veins are blood vessels that carry deoxygenated blood. That is true, but not all veins carry just deoxygenated blood. What is the definition for them? If you want to say what an artery is, always remember this. An artery is a blood vessel that carries blood away from the heart. Once that blood vessel is carrying blood away from the heart, it's an artery. Any blood vessel that is carrying blood to the heart is known as a vein. And in between them now, the blood vessels that connect arteries to veins are called capillaries. All right. So this is a very graphic diagram, but it kind of shows, you know, arteries carry blood at a very high pressure and a large amount. So if an artery is damaged, you can have spurting blood with a pulsating flow and a very bright red color, very bright, deep red color, because arteries are carrying blood from the heart. So they're carrying the pressure of the heart with them. When the heart pumps the blood directly into the artery, you're getting that energy that the heart pumped the blood with. With veins now, there's a steady flow because by the time the blood reaches the veins, it would have lost some of its energy. So it's flowing a bit slowly. And of course, with capillaries, because they're so small, usually, to be honest, most of the times when you cut or bruise yourself, it's usually a capillary that you bruise, that you cut. So whenever you get a bruise or something, it's usually a capillary, usually. All right. Now, these are diagrams. Imagine if we were able to take an artery, a vein, and a capillary and cut them across. How would they look inside? Well, they will look something like this. An artery, as you can see, has very thick walls, thick muscular walls. This muscle layer is very thick. Why? Because arteries have to handle a lot of pressure coming from the heart. Veins don't have that kind of thick wall, but they have a larger hole called a lumen. The lumen is the hole through which blood flows. So because a lot of blood is flowing through the veins, they have a larger hole that is needed. They don't have as much energy to push the blood, so they need a larger opening space so that more blood could flow through. And of course, we have the capillary over here now that is much, much smaller than it seems here. As a matter of fact, only one cell at a time, I think, in some cases. It depends on the cell. It depends on the cell. Like blood cells, for example, only one red blood cell could flow through a capillary at a time. That is just to show you how small capillaries are. Imagine that, eh? Now, this is a table, an excellent table showing the differences between arteries, veins, and capillaries. I would advise you to just pause this, take a note of it, learn it, snap a picture of it, remember it, please. Very, very important. I won't go through it here, but this is showing the differences. It gives 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 differences between arteries, veins, and capillaries. CXC most likely will ask a question on this, so it's very important for us to take note of them. Now, important thing to remember about veins is that veins have valves. Now, what happens? Blood moves slowly in veins. So valves are needed to kind of push blood, especially when, like if blood goes down into your foot and it needs to come up, back up your leg to your heart, because it doesn't have as much energy, the veins coming from your leg back to your heart needs valves to help push that blood up, to help push it up your body against the pull of gravity. Now, when some people, for example, they have a condition called varicose veins, like for example, this person, and I think everybody might be familiar with this. Whenever you see somebody with a condition like this, it is because the valves in their veins have become weak. So as a result, it distorts the shape of veins. And as a result now, it could cause the backflow of blood. So a lot of persons like that would need like bands to like bind their legs and keep stuff in place, or they need to go and see a doctor to see what to do, or they need to exercise often to ensure that the blood in their veins is pumped very frequently, very, very frequently. All right. Now we know we have different blood groups. People could have A, B, AB, and O, right? Or some people may have A positive, A negative, B positive, B negative. Now, how do we determine blood groups? How do we determine blood groups? Well, blood groups are determined by antigens that are located on your red blood cells, right? They're determined by antigens located on your red blood cells. Now, here's the thing. Remember, we said antigens were located on bacteria and viruses. This is weird. Well, there are special antigens that are located on your red blood cells. They're not harmful to your body, but these antigens help to determine what kind of blood type you have. Now, we have two types of antigens. One is called antigen A and one is called antigen B. Now, persons who have antigen A would have a blood type of A. It could be A positive or it could be A negative. Persons who have antigen B on their red blood cells would have a blood type of B positive or B negative. Persons who have both antigens A and B on their red blood cells are known as having blood type AB, whether AB positive or AB negative. And if you don't have either antigen A or antigen B on your red blood cell, then you are known as having blood type O, whether O positive or the more rare O negative. But here's the interesting thing. In the plasma in your blood, if you have antigen A on your red blood cells, remember we said that our lymphocytes produce antibodies. Remember we said our lymphocytes produce antibodies. So if you have antigen A on your red blood cells, you are supposed to have antigen B, anti-B bodies. Wow. So if you have antigen A on your red blood cells, your antibodies should be anti-B bodies. So it should be the exact opposite. So if you have antigen B antigens on your red blood cell, you should have anti-A antibodies coming from your lymphocytes, right? If you have both antigen A and antigen B, your body would not produce anti-A or anti-B antibodies. And if you don't have any of the antigens, your body will produce both anti-A and anti-B antibodies. Now, what do we mean by all of that? Let me look at this person. This person has a blood type of A, whether A positive or A negative, because they have antigen A on their red blood cells and antibody B in their blood. If they had antibody A while having antigen A, what would happen is that their red blood cells would stick together. They would stick together. The red blood cells will start sticking to their antibodies and they'll start sticking to other red blood cells. And that sounds nice, but it's not. Because if all the red blood cells start sticking together, it means you're going to be clotting. Your blood is going to start clotting, which is going to hinder blood flow, which could give you all kind of different medical problems. All right. Same thing with this one. This person who has antigen B. If they had antibody B, then the red blood cells would start sticking to each other. It's called coagulation, or meaning where the blood cells stick together and they could cause blockages to blood flow and so on. That is why it's important for us to know what type of blood we have, so that if we need blood, the doctors are able to know what type of blood to give us. If you give somebody the wrong blood, you could actually kill them. Because if you give them the wrong blood, you could cause all of their blood cells to clot up and clog up together and block up the arteries and the veins and prevent blood from flowing and kill them. So that is why it is very important, very, very important to consider blood type. All right. Now with blood groups, people with blood group AB, remember just look at AB, meaning that their red blood cells carry both antigens A and B. They, interestingly, can receive blood from anyone. We call them the selfish type. But such people with blood groups AB, they are known as universal recipients. they could receive blood from anybody. But people with blood group O, meaning that their red blood cells carry no antigens, but their blood plasma carries both antibodies A and B, can give blood to anybody. Such people with blood group O are known as universal donors. So once again, blood group AB means that you are a universal recipient. Anybody could give you blood. And blood group O means you're a universal donor, meaning anybody could donate blood to you. All right, very, very important.